One day, I will return to your side. Disco Elysium is the madman's tale of forgetting who you are, rediscovering yourself, and compressing your shit together. If you want, you take on the role of an amnesiac police officer whose history you're not sure about. You're not sure about anything. You're not even convinced you're a cop necessarily. But you ride the waves and see where it takes you. Taking place in what's told as a hotspot yet desolate European despot city, you're supposedly here to handle a murder investigation. Some dude's hanging from a noose outside of the hotel in the back. Ah shit, you were supposed to pull him down a week ago. You're accompanied by fellow officer, Kim Kitsuragi. He's a lieutenant from a different precinct, but he's here to assist all the same. While you're a bumbling mess who can't even recall where his left shoe is, Kim is your stalwart beacon of redemption from mediocrity, as he has all his faculties together, and is aware of the current situation, and most ongoings of the past 40 years in general. The game plays as a heavily narrated journey with skill checks and other funky numbers to facilitate what might really be called and referred to as a role-playing game. Now ain't that scary. Your character, figuratively but also literally, develops as the game goes on, whether you give much permission or not, as inaction is just a righteous cause as anything else you would or could be doing. Stats increase, things are discovered, thoughts are made. I'll get to those in a sec. The immediacy of this game is fucking amazingly immediate. No joke. You are very minorly restricted at the start of the game to do a couple things, but right afterwards, boom, that's it. Go, explore. The world is open to you. It's down to you what to do with it. You have a timer throughout the game. You're probably unlikely to notice it for the grander reasons. It's just there to facilitate some progress if you end up literally doing nothing at all for a straight week. But to compensate any rash decisions, time only progresses when you're interacting with new events. It could be talking to people, to gathering evidence, to reading a book, or sitting on a chair. Time only moves when you make it move. Repeating previous choices or dialogues won't progress it either. Though I think selecting new options in previous branches will retroactively make it so. Your clothing represents you on one side. Each article of clothing gives you stat benefits and deficits. Mix and match to face the challenge head on. Function over form if you're really serious about this shit, which maybe you should or shouldn't be. Your other side is comprised of your thoughts. Any interesting concepts or ideas that take further processing than just a cursory glance must be digested in your thought cabinet. When coming across such oddities, you must assign the thought to a slot and spend time honing it, which happens when enough time passes. Some ideas take a couple hours. Some take almost a day's worth of effort. They let you come to some startling conclusions about not only yourself, but the world around you. While you have stats, and while thoughts affect stats, they're not definitively what your class is. When you've picked enough dialogue options pertaining to certain social orders of the world, or after you've responded enough times with a perceived reception of officer branches, you'll be prompted with the chance of solidifying your position, or positions, on the social spectrum, as well as your professional career. Perhaps you're a fat fucking fascist pig, one of those drab-wearing, mustache-cleaning Nazi scum. Or maybe you've gone more liberal throughout your time, and being self-expressing and free is more your style. How do you command respect from the lowly peons of society, as you being a police officer? Maybe you're the superstar type, so big and bold, everyone knows you. And if they don't, you make it known to them that you're big business. Or maybe you're just a sorry cop and you can't stop apologizing to everyone. No matter what, sorry. You've got around 8 of these little facades to creep into, but you're not limited to one or the other. Liberal fascist? Go ahead. It's what you believe in that matters after all. Just be aware when you tap into these powers, people are inherently just going to see you differently, which brings me to another amazing point of dialogue. Saying less is sometimes saying more. The game plays a neat trick, falsely kicking you into thinking you should just hit every dialogue box there is so that you cover all corners. But sometimes what you say can be loaded, unfair. Sometimes it doesn't even help furthering your investigations. Choosing or not choosing, all these selections can even further define who you are and how you're seen. And beyond that, knowing some things, or perhaps not knowing anything at all, can even assist in skill checks, or become a detriment to them. Bliss is ignorance, power is knowledge. An applauding mechanic that should be endorsed by all games from here on is that even if you avoid a topic from some of the earliest conversations in the game, it can actually be reflected upon later on down the line, even if it seems totally inconsequential. I'll just vouch and say that something I did, or did not, discuss on my first day in the game changed its response 5 days later because I had not even asked the question before knowing one thing so much later down the line. and the characters actually reacted differently to this. I read about 300,000 words, or some arbitrary number, before I read word number 1,287 in this book. And because I read ahead, word number 1,288 changed on me. I legit don't know many games that do that. Like going off to the side here, it's as if you decide to not talk to anyone in Goodsprings in Fallout New Vegas, asking about Benny, only to deal with him regardless, and then you decide to head back to Goodsprings to then ask about Benny, but you can just miraculously say, oh yeah, don't worry about telling me what route he took, I caught up with him. What game does that? That's thinking ahead. For every word I keep saying, I spoil just a little bit more of this game, and I don't want to do that. If we're to rank this game on my personal story hierarchy, it'd look a little something like this. Tier 1 is the master race. Tier 2 is things that compare to it. Tier 3 is the ones I love or provide a good thought, the games I'm willing to quote. Tier 4 is just cool, and then below that is unorganized. Disco Elysium hits Tier 2. I literally only have a couple of those that fit there, which is why you need to understand Disco Elysium. This is a game that you read. If that scares you, you might want to play something else. You know, I myself have trouble reading books, almost to the point where I kind of just can't. To this day, I literally have only finished a single book in my life. No, I'm not telling you what it was, but it has only about 200 pages to it. Yet I'm the loser who loves Planescape Torment, and I also love Disco Elysium. In fact, if you like Planescape, you're going to dig Disco Elysium just as much, as the two have a lot of intersecting concepts and relations. I haven't even touched on the visual design. It's awesome. Maybe not revolutionary, but the environment is there, it's clean, it's memorable. It's a frozen tundra of a city that can't hold itself together, yet everyone here is desperately trying to. The characters are distinct, you don't mix them up for one another, and that's insanely important. How many games have you played where people are just faceless entities you can't really discern between because they reuse voice actors or just generate generic 3D face models? The music is godly. It has easily topped my chart. I think I might be willing to put it into my top 10 game soundtracks. It's sad. It's inspiring. It's damn near perfect. Never have I ever associated such feelings and memories to the tracks I hear. When you first hear Krenel, Downwell, Somatosensor, you keep track of the exact feeling you have at that single moment in the game. You're never gonna be the same after that. I didn't shed a tear when I played this game, because I didn't. All the characters in the story were crying for me. But I'll be damned if my choices, however little they mattered in the end, didn't make me regret, while simultaneously confide in my own abilities with what it is I chose to do. At the start of the game, you can look in the mirror. You can get a look of yourself. I didn't. I went through the entire game faceless, not really understanding how I looked, ever. And of course, the game even commented about this later. And that's one of the smallest details of my first playthrough. I want to play again, and probably another time after that, because the results of conclusions you get from this are super tailored to what you've done, and you feel it. Even if you meet up at the same junctions every playthrough, failing is just another means of success. This whole thing is about having all of the pieces to a puzzle, but yet having none of the answers. I'm being serious when I say that this game has literally changed a lot of my perspective on life. It typically takes being at a tier 3 story for me to do that. This one is big for doing that. I might just sound like this over-engrossed hipster fanboy, but if you manage to garner respect from some of the toughest spots of the internet, you've achieved something, because the internet isn't very forgiving. You know, I try to make reviews quick, to the point, but with Disco Elysium, I just couldn't. And that's funny, given that this is literally just a game about words. There's no real conventional video game implanted in here. I'm not gonna be a chode and say, it's an experience! Games are art! Because it doesn't kid itself. It knows it doesn't have to hold to those titles in order to function. But I will say that for something that's akin to what people might call a book, it's pretty unbelievably good. You might hate it. You might despise it. You might be so wrapped up in your own social political circle that you can't manage a suspension of disbelief for a few hours. If that's the case, then don't play. You're not gonna get it, and you're definitely not gonna enjoy it. Let's stop there. There's a big update on the way that's gonna add even more dialogue to the book. and a lofty goal of adding voice acting for every line in the game. I really hope that one comes through. As for what acting there is, the mic quality difference for about half the cast is so drastically different that it breaks immersion a lot of the time. If they can get Kim's original voice actor in for all of his lines, I think we're in the clear. If you play, the point that should captivate and sell you is when you start interacting with the hanging corpse. And you'll understand why I put 3 quotes around that if you get to it. Maybe you won't. Who knows how your playthrough will go. Now don't let me waste any more of your time. Of all the creatures I have met, you are the most beautiful. I have to say goodbye now. Thanks, ancient reptilian brain.